Hey, welcome back. Here I am with a dear friend, Joe, who I knew from many years ago, and I haven't seen him in like 15 years. And we're back together, and we've had a great time chatting. And Joe helped me found the Souvenirs Poetry Appreciation Club. And since I've got him here, I have to have him recite a poem for us. So I'm going to go ahead and let you say your poem.
Okay, and so, Tim, you're way too generous sharing the credit because you are a force of nature who hit me like a meteor with this poetry club that changed my life. So.
But you were one of the people who was actually willing to join when it was still a poetry memorization club.
Yes.
You and Andrea and I were the only members for a window of time. So I will never forget the value there.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, when I've seen by time's fell hand defaced the rich proud cost of outworn buried age, or brass eternal slave to mortal rage, when sometimes lofty towers I see down raised, increasing store with loss and loss with store, when I have seen such interchange of state, or state itself confounded to decay, ruin has taught me thus to ruminate, that time will come and take my love away. This thought is as a death which cannot choose but weep to have that which it fears to lose.
That is beautiful. And you know what? It doesn't matter if you didn't remember every single line, because I totally threw this on you in the last second, and yet you quoted it so beautifully and nailed the delivery. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you.
I love you, man, and I am so glad to see you again. And I'm so glad that I got to hear you do some poems, and that I get to share that with everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Awesome. So Joe also is a world traveler who's been all over and lived in all kinds of amazing places, and he has been collecting stories.
Yes.
And I've heard some of these awesome stories. He collects stories from people all over the world. And you record them, and put them on a podcast. Tell me a little bit about the Observer Effect.
So the Observer Effect is an effort to have encounters with strangers from other cultures as I travel, and to value people's stories, to give people an ear and listen and collect these stories that travelers don't always get to tell when they go home. But travel is often one of the most powerful educations that we ever have in our life. And so every episode ends with a great travel story, but along the way I just try to leap over any cultural barriers and connect with people that are different from me. So every week I publish an episode.
Absolutely awesome. You should definitely hear these episodes, because the stories that he finds, the people that he talks to, it's so diverse, and so
refugees and tourists and expatriates and soldiers and all kinds of reasons that people travel, you know?
Absolutely. And the amazingness that is in every single human soul, that all of us have stories to tell, all of us have these rich depths that, can be hidden by our surfaces. And anyway, it's a phenomenal podcast. Definitely check it out. I'll put a link down below. But why don't you really quickly just tell us a brief version of one of the stories that has been meaningful to you?
Okay. About 300 stories in my head that I'm drawing from right now. So I went to the Nobel Museum in Stockholm, and I noticed a guy with kind of crazy hair talking to the people in the gift shop, offering this trinket that he had invented for them to sell. And I was like, that's interesting. I was scouring the place for who am I going to meet to interview, and he came over, and he turned out to be an astrophysicist from Boston.
Wow.
Yeah. And his take on the Nobel Museum was distinct because his friends were on the walls,
Oh, wow.
And I started the interview, and he said, listen, I have to go meet my wife at the hotel. And I said, I can follow you on the street. So I ran along the street of Stockholm interviewing this guy, and he said, when we got to the end, I asked him for his best travel story. He said, actually, it was when someone traveled to me. Jorge Luis Borges came to Boston, and Kenneth got to hang out with him.
Wow.
And he was at a dinner, and he said, so I'd written articles about Borges. He's like one of my heroes. And I got to ask him a question, and he said, you wrote about coming to Boston and sitting on the bench by the in Cambridge by the river, the Charles River, and you imagined meeting your past self. What about the future you? What would happen what would you say to the future you? And Borges said something along the lines of, I can't tell you. But Kenneth just gushed, and to see an astrophysicist gush and be a fanboy was
amazing. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Tim.